Welcome to Leadership Rediscovered. I'm your host, Laura Siebold, and I am very honored to be joined today by Coach Dawn Plitzuweit, the new women's basketball coach at WVU. Dawn, thanks for being here.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm going to read your formal, very official bio here,
Okay, well,
and then
here
we
go.
can have a fun conversation. How about that?
This is the boring stuff.
Sorry, I'll talk fast. All
Okay,
right.
good.
Dawn Plitzuweit was named the 6th women's basketball coach in West Virginia University history on March 31st, 2022. She comes to West Virginia after serving as the head coach at South Dakota from 2016 to 2022. During her 6 seasons in Vermillion, South Dakota, she amassed a 158-36 record, including an 83-10 mark in the Summit League. The 3-time Summit League Coach of the Year, Plitzuweit led the Coyotes
Ooh, well done.
to the 3 regular season championships, 3 conference tournament championships, 4 NCAA tournament appearances, and a berth in the 2022 NCAA Sweet 16 during her tenure at USD. Plitzuweit also holds the Summit League record for overall winning percentage and conference winning percentage. Very well done. Following the 21-22 campaign, Plitzuweit received the Kay Yao Award, presented annually to the Division I women's head basketball coach who embodies a winning spirit while displaying great character on and off the court. Prior to her 6 seasons in Vermillion, Plitzuweit served as the head coach at Northern Kentucky from 2012 to 2016, where she amassed a record of 71-54 and reached the Women's Basketball Invitational in all 4 years of her tenure. From 2007 to 2012, Plitzuweit served as the associate head coach at Michigan and helped the Wolverines reach the postseason 4 times in 5 years, including a berth in the 2012 NCAA tournament. Plitzuweit earned her first head coaching job at Grand Valley State University in 2002 and remained with the Lakers until 2007. She began her coaching career at her alma mater, Michigan Tech, under her collegiate coach, Kevin Borseth, in 1995. Those two paired up for 11 seasons with stops at Michigan Tech, Green Bay, and Michigan. And she also served as an assistant coach at Wisconsin for the 1997 to 98 season under Jane Albright. A graduate of Michigan Tech, Plitzuweit earned back-to-back GLIAC Player of the Year awards, 4 all-conference honors, 3 all-defensive team nods. She led the Huskies to a 99-22 record and 4 trips to the NCAA Division II tournament. A native of West Bend, Wisconsin, Plitzuweit and her husband Jay have a son, AJ, and a daughter, Lexi. AJ plays basketball for South Dakota and was the Summit League Newcomer of the Year and an All-Summit League first teamer in 2020 to 2021. And Lexi plays basketball for Grand Valley State. Very exciting.
That was a long bio. Are you
It's
tired? Should we take a break at this point in time?
It's an impressive bio,
Thank
though,
you.
and very excited to have you here in Morgantown leading this women's basketball team. And I really just want to dive in and hear about your journey. So bring this to life.
Whew.
I'd love to hear how you even got started and interested in coaching.
Well, it starts, I think, for me back when I was probably in kindergarten. I was a very shy individual. I really didn't even want to go to school. I think I cried my first day. That's kind of embarrassing to say. And then the teacher that I had, Mrs. Monkey, was someone who somehow, and I'm not exactly sure how, it really encouraged us and we had a lot of fun. And then by the end of it, I thought I was going to be a kindergarten teacher.
Wow.
Then it moves on. I played basketball in middle school, grade school, middle school, high school, and all sports at that point in time. There were only 4 girls in my class in elementary school. So,
Wow.
yep, I had to be a cheerleader, a basketball player, softball player,
Baseball
baseball.
player.
Yeah, exactly. So you had to do a little bit of everything at that point in time. Volleyball was big. And so in 6th grade, I had a basketball coach by the name of Diane Boehm who made basketball really fun. The expectation was to perform at a very high level, but we were encouraged to have a really good time doing it. And so when I went off then I went to high school and we had a lot of success in a couple of different sports. But I had coaches there who really, I thought, held me accountable to give my best at all times. And that certainly was a skill that was important moving into college. Kevin Borseth, I played for him for 5 years, coached with him for 11 years. So really learned a great deal from him about how to lead others. And I think when I went to college, I really planned on being a kindergarten teacher. That was my goal in life. I was going to be a kindergarten teacher and a 6th grade coach. You know, you kind of gravitate to the people who have really been a major impact in your life. And then somehow the Lord had different plans for me. I ended up as a college basketball coach. And I always laugh with our players because I think sometimes they still act like they're in kindergarten, and we do too. We want to have a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and
adults and kindergartners not so different.
That's
actually.
Exactly right. That's right. But I don't have to tie shoes, so that's a good thing.
That's a very important distinction. That's awesome. And I appreciate you sharing that because I just think it's interesting. I had a guest on the show one time talk about, people can't be it unless they can see it.
Right.
And so it is interesting to think about just what you're exposed to. And even though you seemed a little bit traumatized about going to kindergarten initially, it sounds like you had a great teacher who really had an impact. And I'm sure in your role now, you probably do a lot of teaching anyway.
Well, it's important for us that we are teaching a skill set to our young ladies on the basketball court, certainly. There's the competence, the skill of playing basketball at a high level.
Right.
But then there's a confidence that comes with that. And then there's the leadership component that comes with that. Our goal for our young ladies here at West Virginia University is by the time they graduate from West Virginia to be the most confident version of themselves that they can be. And so that comes, again, is confidence, chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
Competence before confidence. I think that's really what I preach and what we try to work on. We have coaches that talk about confidence before competence, but they certainly work together at a very high level.
They do. And that's so true. And it's interesting. I'm going through that right now because my son is playing a sport for the first time at age 13. And so it's really interesting to watch him go from, really with kids who have been playing that sport for a really long time and to look at his confidence levels. And I do think a lot of it has to do with, he just doesn't know what he's doing. And so he doesn't have that competence. And it does impact his level of confidence too.
Exactly. And I think for us, it's a matter of, even with our team now, it's all new to them. And so it's not a matter of they aren't trying to do what we're asking them to do. They don't know what that looks like yet. And so it's teaching them, kind of reteaching in some ways, just because it's a little bit different. Not that our way is right and the other way was wrong. And we have a number of transfer kids. And so it's the same there. It's not that our way is just our way, and as time goes on, you learn how to develop the best system, the best version of you. And so I think it's pretty interesting because I've had a chance to do that. And as a head coach, kind of learn who I am in coaching and what that looks like. And for me, it's really important that our young ladies work their tails off, but that they can do it with a smile on their face, that they can have some fun doing it. I think there are a lot of people in coaching overall who send a message to players that this is your job. This is your job to be the best collegiate athlete you can be. And I don't disagree with that sentiment, but I think the way it's approached sometimes makes it sound as if you're not supposed to enjoy your job. If you don't enjoy your job, then why do it, girl?
Exactly.
So I think that's important that they have a chance to really enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it seems to me there's just more and more pressure that seems to be on student athletes lately. And you hear, maybe we're just hearing more about it now, but just the having to balance the pressures of school and sports and family and, whatever else is going on. I'd love to hear your perspective on that and, the role that you play in trying to manage that as well.
I really believe this. I believe that high school age kids and college age kids are under more stress and pressure than ever before. I think people are under more stress and pressure than ever before. But certainly those are the ages of people that we interact with the most, and certainly you can see it. We're asking young ladies, but all boys too, certainly what they want to be when they grow up, when they're in, what do you want to do in 6th, 7th, 8th grade? We're asking them throughout high school. We're asking them to plan their curriculum in high school around what they want to do when they graduate from college. They come to college and we're asking them not only what they want to do, but what their dream job looks like. And so there's a lot of stress on them that way. From a basketball standpoint, when I went to college, you got a degree. I don't know. I wasn't even going, the school I picked didn't even have elementary education. I was going to get a secondary education degree and go back and pick up an elementary education. But I didn't stress about it because that was just a different time. You got a degree and then you got a job. Where now, they're being asked so much earlier. When I played in college, it was the only thing you knew at the end of the game was if you won or lost.
Yeah.
There wasn't an internet, so it wasn't like you could see your stats online.
Right.
If you wanted to know what the stats were after the game, you had to buy a paper at the local gas station or the grocery store the next day and then kind of hope that they covered it. Who was going to do that?
Yeah, and by that point, you've moved on.
Yeah, we've had a good time after the game. We went to dinner. We
Exactly.
had dessert after that. We had a good time.
Good.
So I think it's nowadays, there's the highlight reels are put up instantly.
Mm-hmm.
The comments are out there on social media instantly. And so I think there's just certainly so much more pressure for student athletes. And so there was also a time and age when we told student athletes just stay off social media.
Ooh,
but now there's a time and age where we're saying build your brand.
Yes.
There's the era of NIL, name, image, likeness. It's important that you have a strong social media following. So we just keep adding to them. Then we have these cell phones. I don't have mine on me right now, but they're constantly being asked for information. Yeah. They're being watched, and it's just it's hard.
Criticized and analyzed at their every move.
So I think it's our job as coaches to help them understand how to live in the precious present, how to be in the moment. And it's really one of our 3 expectations. We have 3 expectations for our young ladies. One is be your best in everything you do. Be thankful. And we are very fortunate to be at West Virginia, but we need to not take that for granted.
Yeah.
We want to be humble, but we also want to be hungry. We want to do really well. And then enjoy the precious present, be in the here and now. Because if you're not doing that, you can get caught up in all those other pressures. And that becomes a great challenge for our student athletes.
That's fantastic. And I feel like that, I love how you have those expectations laid out clearly, because I think they're easy to remember, they're repeatable, and then you can even reinforce, as different moments are happening, you can tie back to those too. Right. And they're real simple for people to understand, but meaningful. It really makes an impact.
Well, and I think what our young ladies over the course of time have shared is that the one that probably sticks with them the most is to be in the here and now. Because I think certainly we as females really pride ourselves on multitasking.
Yes.
You can multitask, but you can't multifocus, right? And so we're doing a lot of different things at the same time. So when the team comes over to our house, we have a little bucket and we take their cell phones and put their cell phones in and just let them relax for an hour and a half, eating dinner, just spend time with each other. It almost shocks their system a little bit at first, and then they almost really seem to enjoy it. Oh yeah,
I bet they do.
Take your phones with you. Yeah. Please get those out of here.
I don't want them all.
I did not want to hear that buzzing.
But it's a good lesson in building in time to be disconnected a little bit and to not be so focused, on that screen and that world that's happening in your pocket every second of every day.
Every second. That's right. Always.
I know you are coming into, a team that has returning players, but then also new players. And I'd love to hear your process for just assimilating to a new team and then, again, building an effective team as well.
Well, I think certainly the part for us that's really important is connecting, really. And how do you do that? Well, when we first got here, there were 7 returners, 7 young ladies who wanted to finish their careers at West Virginia and move further along the path, and we were excited about that. So our first task was to really invest in spending time with them and getting to know them, working them out. So we were fortunate that we got here at a time we could still do that, and that allows us to naturally get to know each other, have some meals together, time together. And it is different because there's a point there you're trying to get to know each other, and it has to be authentic. And that takes some time to do that. At the same time, 7 players isn't enough. And so we really had to our staff, I was really fortunate, our staff of coaches from the University of South Dakota all came here and so we were able to kind of hit the ground running. We knew how to work together. We have great energy and chemistry with each other, and that makes it a lot of fun. And I think players feed off of that too. They kind of know when your leadership group is together or when it's disjointed. And then we brought in 6 newcomers, and so it was an opportunity for us to get to know who they were, hear their story, and you can only go based upon what they tell you, right? And then you get to know who they are. But after that, once we got all here together in June, it was really important that we started to build the chemistry for our program moving forward. I will say this. The 13 young ladies that we have amazing chemistry for being together for only a short time period.
That's great.
And I think it's because they want to be really good.
Yeah.
And I think our coaches have done a really good job of being very intentional about putting them in situations where they have to learn about each other or just spend time with each other. It could be through book studies, it could be through fun, silly little games, but we've had an opportunity through different community service opportunities to spend time with each other outside of basketball. We don't talk about basketball. We are just together, and that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. We were having a conversation about that, just thinking about how much time they are spending together, not doing, either working out or doing drills or whatever the case may be. I mean, how much time would you say is spent just on those chemistry building type moments or connection building versus the true, core basketball time?
Well, the NCAA allows us 8 hours a week in the summer and then 8 hours a week together now to work out. So that's our accountable athletically related activities. 4 of those can be in basketball. So we only get 4 hours a week right now from on the basketball court. Then they have up to 4 hours a week with our strength and conditioning coach and staff. And so it's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
You do get to learn about each other and you build the connectivity on the court. But at the same time, if you're not intentional about spending time together outside of that, then it's hard to become united, connected, really get to know each other. And so, again, the first book we read is actually The Precious Present. And I thought that was a really fun book. We did a little bingo activity, get to know each other, some fun things about each other. But
very cool.
As you're hearing each of your young ladies talk about what it means to them or different parts of it that resonate with them, it gives you an opportunity to share experiences. Then we read the book Training Camp. I think it's a John Gordon book.
Training Camp.
John Gordon books are very inspirational. I think this is a great short story. It was actually funny to hear college kids say, "We have to read a book outside of class. What are you talking about?
What is this? I'm on summer break."
Right. And then it was great because one of our players came up to me before a morning workout. I think it was like at 7:00 in the morning, said, "You didn't tell us." Now what? Now what happened?
Yeah.
What are you even referring to? You didn't tell us about the end of the book. I was like, oh. So there's a surprise ending for anyone who's watching. Surprise ending.
Everybody needs to read the book.
Everybody needs to read the book. But it was great because then I knew at least they read the book.
Yeah. And it sounds like they got into it.
They did get into it. And so, but that was another opportunity. We had 4 different coaches. All of our coaches kind of led a section of the book. And so it was great for them to connect with each other through it. But it's a great way to spend time together, get to know each other. It's had some meals together, dinners together. They said community service opportunities. So it's been a very busy time for our young ladies, but I also think it's the summers when they have some more free time than they do now. They maybe are taking a class or 2 in the summer. Now they're in a full load, and so it becomes a lot for them.
Yeah,
at this
well,
time.
and that goes back to that balance conversation of, managing all of the different expectations and pressures that they do have. But it sounds like you make the moments count when you have that time together, which is important.
My husband's was a social worker, and
wow.
And one of the things that really resonated with me is that he talked about really effective meetings. If you're going to have a 30-minute meeting, then you need to spend at least an hour and a half preparing for that 30-minute meeting. And so I really believe that with our players' time is very valuable. Our coaches' time is very valuable. And so our practice plans are to the minute and have all the little details and which manager is where, which practice guy is where, which coach is on which end, and we're trying to get a lot done at that time. But it's the same with our players' time, whether it's community service, whether it's painting walls at Chestnut Mountain Ranch, or whether it's speaking at Morgantown Rotary or volunteering in different ways. I just think it's really important that our players are ready for those moments. They know what to expect. They're prepared for those, and then they feel good about it. And then once that confidence grows, then that can certainly carry over into basketball too.
Well, that brings such a good discipline and organization too. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a meeting and people are saying, "What are we here for? Why are we meeting?" You're trying to plan the meeting in the meeting basically as it's happening. And so I think teaching them to be intentional and put that forethought into it, but also the discipline that comes with that too. I think that's a good lesson.
I think it's certainly college age student athletes and have an opportunity to continue to develop their organizational skills. And I think it's a fine balance because we as coaches want to send reminders all the time to make sure they're doing this.
Yeah.
But then they also have to take that and learn how to lead themselves with it too. But we can't expect them to do that right away if they haven't done it before. And so when do you start allowing them to go through, or they check their phones? And actually one of our coaches, Ariel, is great with this. She'll send a long text message because there's a lot of information that they need to know. But then in it, it'll say, send your favorite GIF or your favorite emoji if you've read all the way through.
Are you still reading?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's a great way for them to say, okay, all right. And now I know I need to read all of it.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. That's very clever, and it's not punitive. It's a fun way to get them engaged, which is good. So something that is, there's a lot of emphasis on right now, especially in the business world, corporate world, is around leaders being coaches, and don't boss your people, coach your people. And I always think that's interesting because, we talked about this a little bit earlier. A lot of times when people say be a coach, their mind goes to an athletic coach, which I think is a great analogy and picture for them to think of. But I also feel like most people haven't been a coach, and they don't really know what that means. And what they do see is a very limited perspective, of just maybe when the cameras are rolling, or if they've shown up to the Coliseum to watch a game, they're not getting to see a lot of these things that you've even just talked about already. So I'd like to hear your perspective on what is it to be a coach, and what are all the different hats that you wear as a coach?
How long do we have?
As much time as you need.
Okay. It's interesting because I think your comment, Laura, earlier about if you want to be it, it's easier if you see it. And so I really think it's, for everyone who says be a coach, it's probably what they've seen as a coach, whether that's someone they see on TV, whether that's someone that's coached them. As a parent, it's really interesting because you have a different perspective as your kids are going through it too. So, for example, our son was running cross country, and this was when we were living in Kentucky, and as a 7th grader, they moved him up to varsity, and he was a tiny little thing. I'm thinking he might get trampled. I have to trust the coach. The mom in me thinks my kid could get trampled.
This is not a good idea.
The coach in me is saying, trust the coach. Okay, I've got to get to that point. And he actually had a great 7th grade year, and they went to state, and they had some really fantastic runners that were seniors that year. And then now going into 8th grade, he's a varsity cross country runner. And at that point in time, during one of the races, because in cross country, you don't follow them all along. Right. So during one of the races, the head coach talks to me and says, we really need AJ to be a better leader. And I said, okay, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Do you want him to be the first one on the bus? Do you want him to be the last one off the bus? Do you want him to clean the bus? Do you want him to have the team over for breakfast before the cross country meet? When he runs with them in practice, do you want him to set the pace, or do you want him to run with everybody? What does that look like?
Oh my
And he walked away from me.
I love that you asked that.
And he walked away, and I thought, I don't know.
He doesn't know.
He was like, why are you asking all these questions? And so I think it's, from a coaching standpoint, I always think of it, how do you want someone else to coach your kid? Well, you want someone, and this is what I've said, we didn't care if our kids played basketball in college, but they both do. So we're really blessed that way. But we told them, whether you go into chemistry, you're a chemistry major, you're a violinist, whatever you pick, whatever your thing is, we hope that when you go off to college, you have an opportunity to have someone who is going to challenge you, help you grow, hold you accountable, but also make sure that they're there. They know what they're a support system for you. And so I think how I define coaching is that we want to be a support system for our young ladies. We want to help them learn that their work ethic is a transferable skill set. Their communication is a transferable skill set. Their way that they embrace adversity is a transferable skill set. And so for us, it entails more than just teaching them how to score at the rim or shoot or handle the ball, although those things are really important too, because if you don't do those very well, they find someone else to coach the team.
That usually doesn't end well.
Yeah. So that is an important piece of it, but from our standpoint, it's so much more holistic than that.
For sure.
And so, I had a player, this was probably only 10, 12 years ago, actually come into my office. She was really struggling. And she said to me, I asked her a question about, we seem to have a good relationship, and yet you're not sharing with me that you're really struggling. And I'm kind of caught off guard by that. You know what she said to me, Laura? She said, well, everything is perfect in your world. And
Ooh.
at that point in time, I realized I was trying to show our players the face that I thought they needed to see, that even when you deal with adversity, you just kind of hammer through it and you put the right face on. But what I realized is that players needed more than that. They needed to see the real, what it really looks like and what the challenges are. And so I had to open up more to allow them to see more of who I was as a person outside of just a basketball coach. And that was very insightful for me.
Yeah. And that took a lot of courage for her to share that with you too, to say that.
It did. It did. It didn't feel good at the time to hear that, right? But at the same time, I realized I need to change because I want them to feel comfortable in certainly knowing that there's a way to handle all these situations.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes me think too, I'm just curious what type of a relationship the coaching staff has with the players, because I'm sure there are probably certain boundaries that maybe you do try to draw. You're not their parents, but you are a support system. I mean, how do you go about determining what you get involved with, what you don't, what you talk about, what you don't?
I think a lot of that is up to what they're comfortable sharing. And certainly, our job, I feel like, is to really mentor our young ladies and to teach them how to face different situations, but at the same time, provide them the right resources. We are very fortunate here at West Virginia because we do have a nutritionist, a sports psychologist, access to an athletic trainer who can really work with them individually because he has the time to do that. Strength and conditioning coach who has that. We have academic advisors and academic, learning specialists and tutors for every class. And so the resources are here for them to excel at a very high level. At the same time, are they comfortable reaching out, or are they exposed? Are they around those people enough that it just naturally happens? And so, I think it's really we're really fortunate because we do have the experts in the field at doing that. And so one of the things that we try to do with our young ladies, and we are fortunate to start this program this summer. So all the things we do together off the court, we put into a group that we call, our Elevate program. And our mission statement is to elevate our young ladies into confident young women. And so that could be through, book studies. It could be through mentorship. We try to bring in female speakers, not male bashing, just saying we're trying to bring in female speakers and mentors for our young ladies, but also give them opportunities to mentor. And so we do that through our camps, through our clinics. We have one coming up in just a short time, September 18th. It's the Coach P's Mini Mountaineer Clinic. And then with that, the girls they will also be a part of our program. They'll be on the floor during one of our games to hopefully we have to get this all through. I think this has all been approved, but to high five and be in the starting lineups and then, be a part of a reunion night. But also I think the most impactful part of it is that our players, our student athletes who are in college write letters to the young girls, to Susie, to Carol, to Carolyn, to Lexi, and then they get them and the girls can hang their picture, hang the letter with the girl's picture, our player's picture up. And so it becomes a neat way for them to see what it's like for college student athletes going through it. And so like your son, it could be their first time. They were going in 8th grade and they've never played basketball before. Well, this is a great way. It's a 2-hour clinic. There's no fear in going through that. But now you have the benefit of all the other things that come with it. Or you may have been playing for 5 years, 6 years already by the time you get to 8th grade. And so this is an opportunity to grow your skills in a clinic and also have an inspiration beyond that. And
gosh, great exposure.
It is. It's a great way for our young ladies to understand how important their role is in being a leader and being aware of how they carry themselves, what their image is, because they're a role model to so many young girls.
Well, and you never know the impact. I actually have a friend whose daughter plays basketball and struck up a relationship many, many years ago with a player at WVU who I believe has moved on and is even playing internationally now. But they have kept in touch, and to the extent that she's invited them to come see her play, overseas, which I think is incredible. And this girl is still playing, basketball. The younger, one is still playing basketball. And I just think about what an impact that's having on her life and how awesome that the athlete is still maintaining that relationship too. That's really special.
Well, that happened to us at the University of South Dakota, and we played our rival. And it was a double overtime game, and we won the game at home. And so a mom came up and was crying after the game and just said, "This is so incredible." I was like, "Yeah, it was a good win." That's great. She said, "No, I don't care about the game."
Yeah.
Our daughter is passing her classes. Her daughter had some learning disabilities, and she said, "My daughter is so inspired by the girls on the team, and they meet with her after the game, and they talk to her, and they encourage her." And so for the first time, I think she was in 5th grade, for the first time ever, she is passing her classes.
Wow.
And I was like, well, that's the biggest win of the day.
Yes. Yes. Giving
that's
her
really,
that confidence.
Right. And so I thought that was great for our young ladies to hear what kind of an impact their words can actually have.
Yes.
Peer praise is something that is so important even for our players. As a coach, they can hear what we're saying, but they don't. It's just like, yeah, that's what they say, and they kind of let it go. They dismiss it a little bit. But when they get a compliment from a peer, it means something totally different.
I love
and
that.
so encouraging them to do that with each other. And that's, again, we're intentional about it.
Yes.
They write notes to each other, and it's something that is a part of our program, something we grew into our program a few years ago, and is one of the players' favorite parts of the day.
Well, I love that, too, because that really strengthens the bond that they have with each other. And I'm sure that just, can only have a positive impact as to how they play as a team.
Right. Absolutely. And I really believe that this group has something very special to them. I don't know what that's going to look like, because it's a process, right? I don't know what that looks like in terms of how many games we'll be successful in, or what that looks like. But the bottom line is we're controlling what we can control.
Right.
And we're controlling what our unity looks like and feels like. And there certainly is great momentum in that. I believe this in women's athletics. It's probably true in men's too, to some extent, right? But I believe, because of who we're with and how we build that, in order for us to really be as successful as we can possibly be, every young lady needs to feel important, needs to feel valued. They need to love each other. They need to care about how their teammates perform. When I was coaching at Grand Valley, we were fortunate enough to win a national championship. And after the national championship, one of our players was interviewed, and it was the best, worst interview of all time. It was the best because she said the word each other. The question was, what does this mean for you? And she said the words each other 7 times in one full sentence. It was a long run-on sentence. And so it was awful but it was great because Crystal Zick said, we just love each other and we want to see each other do well. And then there are more each others, each other, each other. And so I think that's certainly what is the most important, when you can build a program where young ladies care about each other, truly care about each other, and want their teammates to succeed and want to celebrate their teammates' success. Then something special can take off from there.
Gosh, yeah, that's huge. And I'm just curious, in the process of selecting, who ends up on the team. I mean, how much of that, of course, I know their skill level, their, true technical skill matters, but how much of it is also just trying to figure out, okay, we already have, this core team that's returning. So how do we, figure out who might, enhance what we already have, more from a behavioral or personality perspective?
It's really interesting because when I was coaching at Grand Valley, there was a football coach, and we had a coaches retreat, and we were talking about recruiting. And one of the football coaches at the time said the question I love to ask. It was Chuck Martin, who's coaching at Miami of Ohio. So one of the questions I love to ask is, do you like to hit? And then he'd wait for their response, right? And if they'd be like, he'd say, "No, that's not the kid I want." Like, yeah, I want. And so I've been for years trying to think about, what is that question in women's basketball? How do we get that? Because
I'm like, do you ask them if they like to hit? I'm
no, we don't
sure
ask
about
that. We don't ask that. But I do think over the course of time, we've been, again, pretty intentional about some of the questions we ask. And so we're getting a feel for who they are. And then I think there's a point in time as coaches that we have to sit down and evaluate, okay, from a basketball standpoint, do they fit? Okay, if they don't fit, what is it that, can we modify the behavior that they don't shoot it very well? Right. Can we modify that?
Yeah.
Do they want to change? Is it something that technically it can be changed? What is it from a basketball standpoint? And are they the right fit that way? And then, off the court, are they someone who their teams have great chemistry and energy? Who are they naturally? Are they going to bring something special to our team? And then make the decision. Are they a young lady we would like to have in our program. And so it's kind of an all-encompassing, we don't have a Meyer-Briggs test that we give them, right? But we have a way of working together to kind of figure some of those things out naturally to see if they are someone who's going to really thrive in this program.
And do the current team members have the ability to weigh in on whether someone should be selected?
They do. I also think, they have an opportunity because they get to know them in a very short, a very limited time when they're on campus. Some of them know each other from playing against each other, with each other over the course of time. But certainly their opinion is really, really important to us. We as coaches feel like we've gotten a chance to know them really well and try to make sure that we're bringing the right young ladies on campus. But they certainly do. Like, we like her. She's got she's a lot of fun. She's a lot of energy to her. But not everybody on our team has the same personality either. Yeah. They're all from different backgrounds. And so how does that, kind of come together? And I think you try to figure out what people really value and what they're about. Yeah. And I really love the group that we have in terms of I really believe they're about the right things.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like, but again, that intentional practice. I mean, it sounds like you've really done your homework to figure out what it is that matters to them, what motivates them, and do they fit with your expectations that you'll have too, which is great. Okay, so you've done a really good job of giving, I think, a strong definition and example of coaching and what coaching is and what their role is, but I'd also like to hear your definition of leadership.
Well, first of all, I think a leader has to have great vision. Because if you don't, then what are you doing? Right. So it has to be very clearly defined. I'll give you an example of that. I was coaching at Northern Kentucky, and there was an AAU coach who came on campus. And I certainly believed at Grand Valley, we could from the beginning say, this is what we're going for. We're going to compete to win championships. Well, at Northern Kentucky, we were going through the transition from Division II to Division I. So for 4 years, we couldn't even compete at that point in time in our conference tournament. Wow. And we couldn't qualify for the NCAA tournament. And so when he said that, I thought, he's exactly right. We're trying to sell something, trying to get people interested in our program, but we can't tell them what that vision really is because it's a little bit more elusive. I think certainly at South Dakota, it could be a lot more defined. So at West Virginia, it can be very clearly defined. So I think first and foremost, there has to be a vision of where we're going, and it has to be defined. And then I think for us, we're a program that believes in the process. I told our players just 2 days ago when we worked out for the last time was that we're not going to talk to you about we need to do this to win a game. Yeah. We don't talk about winning games. We're going to talk about winning possessions and what it takes to win enough possessions to feel good and be successful. But we're going to talk about the process of what that looks like. And then the process may be taking care of the ball. But then what does it take to take care of the ball? Why are we turning it over? Is it because we don't see the pass fast enough? Is it because we're not a ready passer? Is it because we're traveling? So if we're traveling, then what do we have to work on? And that that key skill set. So the vision is important. The process is really important for us. I really believe that there's got to be a lot of caring to be a leader. There's got to be you have to, whether you want to call it love your group, love your team, or you have to really like them. I always tell our kids, I really love our kid, like my own two kids, our own two kids. I love them all the time. I like them most of the time. Sometimes more than, sometimes, but you really have to care. I think there's got to be a vision. There's got to be a caring factor. There has to be a competence factor as a leader in order to develop the skills that are necessary to have success. I think leaders are important in mentorship part of it. And I think from that mentorship becomes an opportunity to really gain the confidence that you need. And our goal as leaders, as coaches, is to help young ladies grow that confidence. But how do you do that? Well, do you talk about it? Or do you develop the competence? Do you give them examples? It's like coaching is a lot like parenting. You never really know when they're listening. They'll say something 6 years later and you'll say, oh, you were listening that time. Oh, really? It's really what coaching is. So we just try to keep exposing them to different messages, and so I really do enjoy reading. And even this morning, before we had an early morning conditioning workout, and told them, I read this morning, an old key is not going to open a new door. So if you want to do something different than you've done in the past, you can't do the same things you've been doing. Yep. You need a new key. And so, I certainly think all of those are components in leadership. Personally, I really believe that if we're having a lot of fun, then watch out.
Yeah.
Then I think it can be something really, really special. And, I think there's an authenticity about having fun. And I think there's a perception and there's a reality. And, certainly in recruiting and then going through it with our 2 kids that are in college, there's a perception of what coaches or a program is like. And then there's a reality about it. We tell them we're not changing. We're not changing because you're here. If we're going to, be aggressive in our workout, we're going to be aggressive because you need to see that. Right. And what's interesting is that most young ladies really love that. They want to be, they want to be pushed. They want to be good.
Absolutely. I mean, they're competitive and they've worked very hard to get to the level that they're at. And so I'm sure they're not at the point where they just, I've arrived. They want to keep growing and keep getting better, which is fantastic.
Exactly.
How would you've talked a little bit about, your values and your leadership style, but I'd love to hear you go just a little bit deeper into how you've really developed your leadership style over time and then the values that you have that impact it.
Well, my parents they both worked full time. Neither one went to college. And so they really had to put a lot of time and effort into their careers. My father was a letter carrier for over 30 years, and my mother worked a lot of different jobs to help support us. And then we farmed on the side. Wow. So we had I guess you'd call it a hobby farm. I don't know how
you do farming on the side.
I don't know either, but we did it.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. So, but we were raised in a Lutheran home, and so we went to, Christian day school, elementary school, and high school, and certainly had people around us who were educating us, who were sharing with us, important values of having a bigger picture, but also taking care of other people. And, I think of a lot of people who I've who've coached me, whether it was, again, we talked about Diane Boehm in 6th grade, or how crazy is this? I think it was her brother-in-law was my high school basketball coach, Dar Schramm, Jim Hofferman, all just coaches who have had great impacts. But I really believe that the mindset of it has to get. We have three phrases that we call our building blocks in our program. Those are toughness, togetherness, and find a way. And I think those are a lot of those come
say
from
that one more time. Toughness,
togetherness, and find a way.
Oh, I love
so
that.
the find a way mentality probably came a lot from being in a family setting where it was going to rain tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so we need to get the field planted. We need to get that done today.
Yeah.
But I just got back from prom. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to bed. Nope, I need your help right now. I'm like, really? Okay, all right. There's a find a way. It has to get done. And so whether it's exactly what you thought it was going to look like, but now the machinery didn't work exactly how you thought it was going to work too. So now you have to figure something else out. And so that find a way mentality. I think my mother was raised by her parents and are eternal optimists, and I didn't really even think about that until one of my nieces was actually born with a major heart defect, and so she was in the hospital. They were going to have her 3rd open heart surgery, and my grandfather at the time, who said, well, a lot of times they think they see these things, and then they get into surgery and it's all just totally fine. I'm thinking,
This is our third.
This is our third one. Like they probably know at this point in time, but at that point in time, it kind of clicked for me because I was probably in my late 20s at the time. So that's where it comes from.
Yes.
That's where it comes from. That is innately who they are. And that's where I remember the messages all the time. My parents, when we were on a farm, so they made us be in 4-H. They made us be involved in all of those activities. And we had leadership growth opportunities through that. We had speaking opportunities. I was 9 years old, and my mom made me sign up for the speaking contest, and I gave a speech about my dog Ginger, and I cried during half of it. It was awful. It was so bad. It was like my first day of kindergarten all over again. I was traumatized.
Let's put the shy kid in all these things where she has to be up in front of a bunch of people.
And But over the course of the next 9 years, being in the speaking contest each year, it became something a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
I didn't have a choice. And I always remember my mom saying, "Oh, you did just fine." I'm like, it was awful. I was so mad. But she told me how wonderful it is and would tell, "Oh, you'll find a way. You'll get it done. It always gets done. It always does. You'll get it done." And I'm thinking, so I think there's a part of that. There's a be your best, even if it's uncomfortable. So be your best, be thankful. I certainly think the way we were raised in a Lutheran household, it brings apart a lot of that mentality. So I certainly see the expectations in our program: be your best, be thankful, enjoy the precious present. About how I was raised. I certainly think the toughness, the togetherness, and find a way mentality is all a part of that kind of upbringing and background.
That's so cool. And I heard I was listening to your introductory press conference, which, by the way, this is hilarious that you had to go through that speaking competition, because now think about all the times that you are doing public speaking. Right. So, good job, Mom.
Yeah, that's right.
She's very prophetic.
I thank her for that now at this point in time, but man,
traumatizing.
It was traumatizing. Yeah.
But I heard you talk about every moment matters. And if you're willing to maybe go into that a little bit deeper too, just to hear your perception or perspective on every moment matters.
I think there are two phrases that we use a great deal with our young ladies. One is, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And so we had a team at the University of South Dakota 3 years ago, right before the pandemic hit, and our team was 30-2. So we won a lot of games. Yeah. We had success. It was year 4, I think, in the program. And then the pandemic hits, and so we can't go to the NCAA tournament at that point in time. It's the first time that we had won the conference tournament championship, and so the fans are storming the court, and it was an incredible moment. And then 2 days later, it's all canceled. It was just crazy how that all came about.
Yeah.
But that team also were named the academic national champions. They had the highest cumulative grade point average in all of Division I women's basketball. So there are about 351 women's basketball teams in the country. And so I think that's probably as good of example as you can get in the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And so we're always talking about there are no details too small. And I think that kind of goes into the every moment matters. It's really the same message with our young ladies, but for them to know every conversation that you're having with a young girl or anywhere really does add up.
Yeah. And you never know when they're listening, right?
You never know when they're listening, right?
Those moments do matter. And I think that's a powerful message to deliver to them, because again, they can be distracted and just not really that consciously aware of even what they're saying or doing at times.
Well, and I think what's really interesting, and so in going through this and in coaching, one of the things that I really love about what I do is having an opportunity to help young ladies kind of grow in ways outside of basketball. But even in basketball, that's really fun to watch them and show that to them and point it out to them. But there's a sports psychologist that I've actually listened to quite a bit lately is Brett McCabe. He was on the Today Show with Alabama very recently. And Brett McCabe's big thing probably in the last year or so has been very few student athletes or people in general know how to accept feedback. And so I think for us, what has really changed probably in the last even 3 to 4 years of coaching is being very aware to set the stage, to teach our young ladies how to accept feedback. And I think a lot of people look at that and say, okay, well, all right, so you watch film and they don't do something well. So you prep them for, you're going to see this and you're going to watch this, right? So that's one thing.
Yeah.
I also think and this happened just a couple of days ago in a workout, told the young lady, I don't know how you're going to accept this compliment and see it in film and see yourself doing really well, because some players take that and you would think they puff their chest out and they're like, yeah, this is great, I'm going to go. Or you kind of coast.
Right.
And she kind of coasted
wow.
afterwards.
Yeah.
And so we talked about it a day or two later,
yeah.
like, okay, now you've got to learn how to also accept positive feedback and take that and grow. And so,
but still stay hungry.
Right. And so Brett McCabe has been really influential for me as a coach, because it makes me think about, before talking to our players, how to make sure that they understand what they're gonna get hit with first,
Yes.
and then how you respond to that. Whether that's something that's a growth opportunity, or whether that's something that is it's a growth opportunity, but it's a growth opportunity after you did something really, really well. How do you continue to compete? How do you stay humble but really hungry?
Yeah,
How do you give your best
absolutely.
at all times? How do you do that?
Yeah, and to understand that if you are giving them more critical feedback, the intent behind it,
Right.
you're not trying to tear them down or make them feel terrible about themselves, but, trying to give them opportunities to grow and get better too.
Absolutely. And I think that's certainly a transferable skill set to
Yes.
any, I think back to the young lady who sat in my office and told me 10 years ago, you're not real. Like, you don't relate to us.
Yeah.
I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
No, not everything's perfect. So,
Right.
but it made me realize I need to show my vulnerability to them in order for them to feel like they can trust the message that I'm giving them
Yeah,
too.
connected back. Well, and feedback, I mean, this is huge because again, even in the corporate world, there's a lot of struggles with giving feedback and receiving feedback on both ends. It can be really challenging. And so
Absolutely.
I love that you brought that up because I think there's so many lessons to be learned there.
Right.
So you've done a really good job of showing what it means when we tell leaders to be a coach and really diving into those skills, which I appreciate you really, taking us on that dive and that journey, because I think it gives people a much better picture than what, again, they just see on camera. What have we missed? What have we not covered?
That's a really good question. I would say one of the things that our group has to learn yet, and I think this is something that applies to all types of leadership, is that there are very different types of leaders. We had a group a couple of years ago that we had one senior in our program, and I listened to a podcast, actually. It was a Jeff Jansen podcast, and he's a leadership expert in the world of athletics. And he talked about the different types of leaders within your program. He talked about performance leaders, the ones that your team looks to do things on the court. In the heat of the moment, your players are looking for this person or these individuals to step up. There are leaders in your locker room. The people who are going to make sure that there is a connectivity, that if there is negativity, it's getting squashed. If there's a situation, that it then gets moved forward and it gets handled rather than continues to grow and fester. You have social leaders, the individuals in your program who are making sure that everyone on your team is doing the right things in a social setting. You have organizational leaders, the leaders in your program who are making sure that everyone's on the same page and everyone's there on time and doing the right thing and wearing the right thing.
Did you read the book?
Yeah, exactly. Did you get to that? Did you? They're having those conversations. And then there's a leader of your reserve group. There's the young ladies who maybe don't play quite as much, but they're really engaged. And so 5 different types of leaders. And I thought that was important, especially for that team, because it goes back to our son in cross country.
Right.
What is it defined as? Yeah. And for that one young lady in our program to feel like it wasn't her job to have to do all 5 things.
Yes.
There are different leaders. And I think certainly in our day and age, I think a lot of times leadership is looked at as this, you're a leader, Laura. You have to go do all these things.
Right.
Right. But the reality is, as a coach, we're not in the locker room with the players. We can't be locker room leaders. We can give you the message that is important about what happens in the locker room, but we're not there. And so we can't be that leader. We're not your social leaders.
Right. We don't want to be.
Exactly. And so, but even for them to understand that there are different ways to empower different individuals within your program to take a very important leadership role. And so I think that's something that whether it's on a team in basketball or in a company, that there are different types of leaders, but also, again, defining what that looks like.
Yeah. And I also like that you're inviting them into leadership and giving them opportunities to bring their best selves to it. So, maybe I'm not the social, probably bad example, I probably would be the social leader. Maybe I'm not the social leader. I know a lot of people who are more comfortable behind the scenes, who are just, whispering in people's ears, who make tremendous impact, but they're not as visible of a leader, but they're still leading and they're still doing it in a really impactful way. So by you walking through those different definitions, and, it speaks to the different personalities that you do have and the different strengths and gifts that each of your leaders have, what they can bring to it and put their own own, fingerprint on.
Well, and I think that's what this group still, we haven't even talked about those different types of leadership. We have exposed them to what responsibilities are out there. We haven't given titles or figured out who's going to do what piece yet.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they're not listening to this podcast. But if they are, we kind of
listen to this podcast.
They might have ruined the surprise for them coming up.
Okay, don't listen to the podcast. That's fantastic, though, and I think I am super excited because you can tell that you have a special group of women here put together, and certainly, I might be a little biased, but you bring a quite a special piece to the equation as well. How can we all support you and the team? What are some things we can do?
That is a great question. Okay, so here's what you can do for us.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's really important that our young ladies have an opportunity to play in front of fans.
Yeah.
Now that COVID is, well, it's not done, but now that the restrictions are different, to get back out and support, it's a lot more fun to play when there are people there supporting your program. That's really, really important. I really believe that there's going to be times to do these different things. Does take some financial backing to do all of that, and having different retreats or bringing in specialists. We bring in leadership experts. We're bringing in, a leadership expert from the Jeff Jansen leadership program to help work with our young ladies, because they are the experts in the field, and that there's a point in time when they need to hear a voice different than mine or our coaches. And so financially, there are opportunities to really help our program continue to grow, not just on the basketball court, but although that is important, but to grow these young ladies into confident young women so that they are graduating from West Virginia University and they're ready to conquer whatever is in front of them.
Whatever they're going to do.
Right.
Okay, so fans, if you're not a fan, become a fan, show up.
Right.
Fill the seats and support them with your presence and your money as well.
That's right. If you're able to. I think there are some people who really love the lead, and people who are listening to this podcast or watching the podcast really have an affinity for growing leaders, obviously, or they're not listening to this.
Yeah.
And so there are individuals that came to us when we were at the University of South Dakota and said, we want to be a part of growing your leadership of your program. How can we help? What does that look like? And so if that's the case, that would be incredible.
Yeah. So many opportunities to support, which is fantastic. Oh, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited. I'm excited for your season to start. And
are you coming to games?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And I've actually never been to one.
Well, it's time.
But I'm ready. Yeah, I'm really excited. So I'm definitely going to come and offer whatever support I can in addition to that. But yeah, I'm excited. Okay, are you willing to do the lightning round?
Lightning round.
Okay. Here we
go. I already told you my first answer is going to be, I hope your question. 60 seconds. Ready? On the clock.
60 seconds to...
Okay, hold on. The record is, we think, 9 questions.
We think 9 questions.
I got to get to 10.
Okay,
just, this is about competing.
Get set, go. What season best fits your personality?
Fall.
What's your most used emoji in text?
Smiley face. Big
Love
smiles.
It. What book, song, movie, podcast has had the greatest impact on your life?
Books. I would say Jesus, CEO, Lori Beth Jones.
Oh, okay, good one. What's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
That I was an introvert for a long time in my life.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. I spend too much money on...
Amazon Prime.
A nice answer. What celebrity would you want to play you in a movie?
Oh, goodness gracious. I'm not really sure about that one. Pass.
Okay. MC Hammer.
Okay.
What's your most meaningful piece of clothing or jewelry you own?
I would have to say my wedding ring.
Very good answer. If you catch me by the fridge at night, I'm probably sneaking...
some bubbly water, something like that.
Okay.
LaCroix.
Best place you've traveled to?
Best place, Australia.
First job?
First job?
Yeah.
Cleaning floors.
Yes!
How do we do?
You won.
Did I win?
Yes.
I did have to pass on one.
That's okay. It's good.
That was fun, though.
That was fun. Thank you.
Okay.
You are fun.
That was stressful, I think.
Well, Coach P, thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to watch you and all of your players this season and just give, all the support that we can to the special group.
Well, it's been great being here, Laura. Certainly appreciate it and look forward to you and all of your listeners coming and watching and supporting.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, shine bright, everyone. And let's go
Mountaineers!
Woo-woo!